When you say someone bothers you, what are you really saying? You're admitting, perhaps unknowingly, that you surrendered a portion of your internal world to something external, something or someone you do not control. That's not an observation, it's a confession. Most people spend their lives believing that emotional disturbance originates from the outside. A rude comment, a dismissive glance, a betrayal, a disagreement, they react as if they've been attacked by a force of nature. But people are not hurricanes. They don't knock you down unless you decide to stand where they swing. This is the first truth we need to absorb. No one can bother you unless you allow them access to your peace. And access, like any key, is given, never stolen. Now, this idea may sound harsh at first. It confronts the ego, because if you're in pain or frustrated or boiling with resentment, the last thing you want to hear is that you played a role in it. We instinctively look for blame outside of ourselves because it's easier. But let me ask you something. What's more empowering, to wait for the world to stop offending you or to develop the inner strength to remain unshaken? Most people never even ask themselves this question. They live in reactive mode, emotionally tossed around by every comment, every perceived slight. One opinion from a stranger online can ruin their day. A partner's bad mood sends them spiraling. A coworker's success triggers their insecurity. What's really happening in these moments? They're not just reacting to other people, they're reacting to the meaning they assign to other people's behavior. Now, this doesn't mean we become numb or indifferent. It doesn't mean we ignore injustice or tolerate disrespect. It means we take responsibility for how we interpret and respond to the world. There's a big difference. Responsibility isn't blame, it's ownership. And ownership is the birthplace of power. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control the significance you place on that behavior. You decide whether to internalize it or dismiss it. That moment of decision, that tiny space between stimulus and response, is where your freedom lives. Most people don't live there. They skip the space entirely. Something happens, they react. A look, a tone, a post, and suddenly they're angry or defensive or hurt. So the next time someone tries to get under your skin, don't ask, why are they like that? Ask instead, why am I letting them in? That's where growth begins. You are not a puppet on someone else's strings. You are not at the mercy of moods or comments or opinions that don't pay rent in your mind. You get to decide who bothers you, and more importantly, who doesn't. The world won't always respect your peace, but that doesn't mean you have to give it away. Let me tell you something that most people never stop to consider. If you're bothered by someone's behavior, it's not just about them. It's about you. More specifically, it's about what they touched in you, something old, something unexamined, something unresolved. What triggers you teaches you. And until you understand that, you will continue handing over your emotional balance to anyone who knows how to press the right button. Think about this. Why do some people walk through the same environment, face the same personalities, hear the same criticism, and remain completely unshaken? It's not because they're special, it's not because they don't care, it's because they've done the work. They've traced the reactions to their roots. They've asked the hard questions about what lies beneath the surface of their own responses. See, we all carry around a kind of emotional wiring, shaped by years of experiences, beliefs, and unmet needs. Some of it goes all the way back to childhood, those moments when we felt ignored, disrespected, misunderstood, or unworthy. And without realizing it, we build a life around avoiding those feelings. So when someone behaves in a way that echoes those early emotional injuries, even slightly, we react strongly, sometimes irrationally. That's a trigger. But the trigger isn't the other person. The trigger is the wound inside you that hasn't healed. Let's say someone talks over you in a meeting. To one person, it's no big deal. To another, it feels like an assault. Why the difference? One has a belief that I am heard and valued even when others are loud. The other, perhaps, has carried a belief since childhood that no one listens to me, so I must fight to be acknowledged. The external event is the same, but the emotional interpretation is completely different. And it's the interpretation that causes the emotional flare-up, not the event itself. What does this mean for you? It means you need to become a student of your own reactions. Your triggers aren't obstacles, they're guides. They point directly to the places in your psychology that are still asking for your attention. And this is where the real work of self-mastery begins. Not in controlling the world around you, but in decoding the world within you. Start paying attention. The next time you feel yourself becoming irritated, defensive, or hurt, pause. Ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now? What fear or belief is being activated in me? You'll be surprised by what you uncover. Sometimes it's as simple as a fear of being excluded. Sometimes it's deeper, a sense of unworthiness that's been operating in the background of your life like a hidden script. And here's the paradox. When you bring these unconscious patterns into your conscious awareness, they begin to lose their power. You realize that the person who triggered you wasn't really the problem. They were just the mirror. And if you're brave enough to look into that mirror, to see what it reflects about your own mindset, your own emotional history, you will start to gain the upper hand in your emotional life. Now, some people resist this. They say, but what if someone really is being rude? What if they really are toxic? That may be true. But the question remains, why do you react the way you do? Because no matter how offensive someone else may be, your inner reaction is still your responsibility. This is not about denying reality. It's about reclaiming your power within it. There's a famous quote attributed to Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The same goes for your emotional triggers. If you don't examine them, they will own you. They'll sabotage your relationships, your clarity, your leadership, and your peace. But once you see them for what they are, they become tools for growth. And let me be clear, this isn't about becoming emotionally numb. It's about becoming emotionally intelligent. It's about noticing the inner turbulence and asking, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of immediately blaming the outside world. When you approach life from that perspective, everything becomes feedback. Nothing is wasted. Every emotional spike becomes an invitation to grow stronger, calmer, and more self-aware. You begin to respond, not react. You begin to engage, not escape. And that's when you know you're no longer just surviving interactions, you're mastering them. So the next time someone gets under your skin, don't be so quick to point the finger outward. Ask yourself, what part of me just got activated and why? Because until you understand your own emotional landscape, you'll keep giving others a map to control it. Emotional triggers aren't problems to avoid, they're signals to decode. Listen to them and you'll stop being ruled by them. We rarely ask ourselves what it costs us to let others live rent-free in our minds. Not financially, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The cost is invisible, which makes it even more dangerous. You don't see your confidence leaking. You don't see your focus being divided. You don't see the slow erosion of your energy every time you allow someone else's words or actions to dictate your emotional climate. But you feel it. You feel it when you can't concentrate. You feel it when your motivation dips for no apparent reason. You feel it in the weight of unspoken resentment you carry from one day to the next. Letting others bother you isn't just a momentary lapse. It's a form of emotional debt, and like any debt, it compounds with interest. Let me explain something foundational. Your attention is a currency. It is limited, powerful, and always flowing towards something. Every moment you spend consumed by how someone treated you, what they said, what they might be thinking, is a moment you are not investing in your own growth, your own goals, your own clarity. You're building their house while neglecting your own. And the real tragedy, most of the time they've already moved on. You're the only one still hosting the conversation in your head. We carry these emotional weights as if we have no choice. We stew over criticisms. We replay slights. We obsess over judgments, real or imagined. And we justify it by saying we're just sensitive or just principled or just human. But the truth is, we are allowing ourselves to become emotionally overdrawn. Our mental accounts are being depleted by withdrawals we didn't authorize, yet we never changed the locks. This mental clutter has a direct effect on your results in life. It impacts decision-making. It clouds intuition. It dilutes conviction. A mind preoccupied with petty drama cannot produce great clarity. A heart burdened with grudges cannot move freely toward purpose. And a person who's constantly reacting to the world cannot build anything meaningful within it. There's a reason the most successful, grounded, and fulfilled people have mastered their emotional boundaries. They understand that every ounce of energy spent on the wrong thing is energy stolen from the right thing. They don't chase every insult. They don't try to win every argument. They don't obsess over who approves or disapproves. They guard their peace like it's sacred, because it is. It's the engine behind all sustained achievement and well-being. Let me give you an image. Imagine your attention as light. When you let every annoyance, every opinion, every negative interaction pull at you, your light gets scattered. It's weak, fragmented, easily dissipated. But when you concentrate it, when you stop wasting energy on things beneath your potential, it becomes a laser, focused, powerful, able to cut through anything. That's what emotional discipline gives you, concentrated force, and yet so many people keep choosing the scattered life. They don't realize they're emotionally tired not because of the work they're doing, but because of the noise they refuse to silence. They wake up already burdened, not by the day ahead, but by the mental residue they never cleared from yesterday, worrying about someone's tone in a text message, rehashing an awkward conversation, holding on to old anger like it's proof of character rather than a chain. What they're really doing is building walls around their own progress, brick by brick, thought by thought, reaction by reaction, until they're boxed in, restless, distracted, and wondering why nothing's moving forward. If this sounds familiar, know this. You don't have to live that way. You can choose to protect your energy like your future depends on it, because it does. You can choose to redirect your attention toward what builds you, not what breaks you down. You can choose to stop subsidizing the chaos of others with the focus you need for yourself. And that choice begins the moment you recognize the true cost of letting them bother you. Not just a bad mood, not just a wasted afternoon, but the slow sacrifice of your potential, traded for the temporary satisfaction of reactivity. It's never worth it. Not once. Let me break this down. Every time someone makes a comment that throws you off balance, or a situation arises that stirs up stress, you face a choice: to react or to respond. Reacting is passive. It's letting the world dictate your emotional state, as if you are simply a leaf blown by the wind. Responding, on the other hand, is active. It's a conscious decision to maintain control of your emotional and mental environment, no matter what is happening around you. When you react, you're handing over your power. You're allowing someone else's words or actions to direct your emotional response. You're saying, I have no control over how I feel right now because of what just happened. But when you respond, you're asserting your sovereignty. You're saying, I control how I feel. I determine how I interpret the world around me. That's a significant difference, and it's one that can change the entire trajectory of your life. So how do you reclaim this inner authority? It starts with something simple but profound: awareness. Most people go through their days unaware of how much they're handing away, piece by piece. Every time you let someone's opinion derail your confidence, or let a small insult linger in your mind for hours, you've handed away a little more of your peace. The first step in taking your power back is to notice. Notice when you're giving your emotional energy to something that doesn't deserve it. Notice when you're reacting instead of responding. From there, you can begin to develop a new habit, the habit of intentionality. Intentionality is the practice of being deliberate in your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. It's about making choices that align with your values, not your knee-jerk reactions. When someone insults you, you can choose to respond with grace. When someone's negativity starts to pull you in, you can choose to let it go. You don't need to give every person or situation a free pass to influence your state of mind. You're the one in charge. And this brings us to an important point. You cannot afford to give away your peace. In fact, peace is one of the most precious resources you possess. It is the foundation of clarity, of creativity, of confidence. When you allow external circumstances to dictate your emotional state, you disrupt that peace. You weaken your ability to think clearly, to make decisions, and to perform at your best. Here's an analogy. Imagine you're trying to build something valuable, whether it's a business, a relationship, or personal growth. Every time you let someone else's negativity or disrespect throw you off course, it's like you're chipping away at your foundation. And while the damage may seem small in the moment, over time, those small chips add up. Eventually, your foundation is unstable, and if your foundation is unstable, nothing you build on top of it can stand firm. This is why you must develop the muscle of emotional control. When you take back authority over your feelings, you solidify your foundation. You stop letting distractions, insults, and misunderstandings knock you off balance. Instead, you stay grounded, clear, and focused. Let's get practical for a moment. When someone says something that bothers you, don't immediately react. Take a breath, take a pause. Give yourself the space to respond rather than react. Ask yourself, does this really matter? Is this person's opinion going to affect my future? Is this moment worth my emotional investment? The more you practice this, the stronger you'll get at it. Eventually, you'll find that things that once threw you off course no longer have the same power over you. And the more you maintain your inner authority, the more energy and focus you'll have to pour into what truly matters. This doesn't mean you'll never feel emotions like anger, frustration, or sadness. Emotions are natural. What matters is how you use them. Do you let them control you, or do you acknowledge them and choose how to respond? The true test of your inner authority lies in moments of difficulty, of adversity. It's easy to stay calm and clear when life is smooth, but when the pressure is on, when someone tries to push your buttons or disrupt your peace, that's when your mastery is really put to the test. And it's in those moments that your power grows. Every time you decide to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion, remember, you cannot build anything of lasting value on unstable ground. Reclaiming your inner authority is how you create that stability. The more you make conscious decisions about where you invest your emotional energy, the stronger and more unshakable you will become. Your peace is yours to protect, and the choice to preserve it is always in your hands. There is something subtle but deeply destructive about the way we carry judgment, not just of others, but of ourselves. When someone offends you, criticizes you, or disrespects you, what you often feel isn't just frustration toward them. What you're really experiencing is the echo of your own internal narrative. That moment of being bothered, that sting you feel, it is as much about what you believe about yourself as it is about what was said or done. This is a truth most people resist because it shifts the spotlight inward. But that's where all lasting change begins. Let's look at it this way. No one can label you with something that doesn't already exist as a possibility in your own mind. If someone calls you lazy and you have no belief, no fear, no hidden suspicion that it might be true, it bounces right off. But if a part of you is already carrying the weight of self-doubt, that same insult hits like a hammer, not because it's true, but because you haven't resolved your own perception of yourself. That unresolved insecurity acts like a hook, and others can pull on it whenever they choose. This is why being bothered is often less about the world and more about your self-perceived. And that's exactly where the work has to be done. You don't rise above judgment by silencing the world. You rise by confronting and refining the way you see yourself. There's an old concept from philosophy and psychology alike, the idea that your beliefs act as filters. They shape the way you experience reality. If you walk through the world with a belief that you are not good enough, you will interpret neutral comments as criticism. You will read rejection into silence. You will assume malice where none exists. But if you shift that belief, if you build a strong, stable identity, you begin to interpret the same experiences very differently. You become less reactive, less threatened, more stable. Think about how much power that gives you. You don't have to fix the world to find peace. You only have to do the work of aligning your identity with truth, with strength, with intentional clarity. When your self-perception is grounded, you become immune to the noise, not indifferent, but immune. You hear the comment, you register the insult, but you don't internalize it. You measure it against the solid foundation of who you know yourself to be, and most of the time, it fails to measure up. So the question becomes, how do you develop this kind of inner certainty? It starts with honesty, real, ruthless honesty. You have to identify the parts of yourself you've been unsure about, the places where you've doubted, feared, or hidden behind masks, the parts you've projected onto others instead of taking ownership of. This is not about guilt or shame. It's about clarity. Until you know where your weak spots are, you can't fortify them, and the longer you avoid them, the more likely they are to be used against you. Once you become aware of those internal fault lines, you begin the process of repair. You replace old judgments with new, earned beliefs. You stop telling yourself stories that don't serve you. Stories like, I'm not enough, I'm always overlooked, people don't respect me. You rewrite the narrative with intention. You reinforce it with action. You stop seeking validation from the outside and start generating conviction from within. That is how you become free from the control of judgment, both theirs and yours. Because here's the truth most people miss. Being bothered by others is not just about the presence of their opinion. It's about the absence of your own clarity. If you know who you are, truly know, then what others say is just noise. You may hear it, but it doesn't enter. It has nowhere to land. Self-mastery at its most essential level, not the suppression of emotion, but the restructuring of perception. When you change the lens, you change the world. When you shift your self-concept from fragile to fortified, from doubtful to deliberate, you no longer become prey to every judgment that comes your way. Now let me be clear. This isn't arrogance. This isn't about thinking you're always right or better than others. It's about knowing yourself well enough to stop depending on other people's opinions to feel stable. You don't become untouchable by putting up walls. You become untouchable by becoming so deeply rooted in your truth that nothing shakes you. And that kind of strength, authentic, quiet, unshakable, cannot be faked. It is earned through reflection, effort, and the willingness to look within, even when it's uncomfortable. So if you're tired of being bothered by what others say, then stop trying to control them. Start building yourself. Stop managing perception. Start mastering your presence. The judgments will still come, but they'll land on a different kind of ground, and that makes all the difference. When you stop doubting who you are, their opinions stop deciding how you feel. There's a point in life when you have to stop asking why things bother you and start asking why you're still allowing them to. That moment marks a transition from unconscious living to conscious leadership of your own mind. It's the line between being acted upon and becoming the one who acts. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll see that much of your suffering doesn't come from what people say or do, but from the meaning you attach to it and the permission you continue to give it. Now, that's not meant as blame, it's meant as a wake-up call. Because only when you accept responsibility for what you allow can you reclaim the power to change it. The people who constantly offend you, the situations that repeatedly drain you, the moments that hijack your peace, none of them have inherent power. They only possess the power you give them through repetition, reaction, and refusal to change the script. And I want to challenge you with something simple. Stop making excuses for staying small. Stop telling yourself that it's just your personality, just your upbringing, just your nature to get bothered easily. No, it's not your nature, it's your conditioning. And all conditioning can be unlearned. You were not born reactive. You were not born insecure. You were not born emotionally fragile. Those patterns were taught, they were absorbed, and if you learn them, you can unlearn them, but only if you're willing to take your attention away from the external noise long enough to do the inner work. That's where the transformation lives, not in changing what happens, but in changing how you meet it. There's a reason the great minds, the wise ones, the grounded leaders all share the same quality, equanimity, a centeredness that can't be bought, faked, or borrowed. It comes from the disciplined habit of not letting every disturbance dictate your state. They know how to pause, to breathe, to step back and ask, is this worth my peace? Is this situation or person worth giving the most valuable thing I have, my focus, my clarity, my life energy? Because make no mistake, what you give your energy to is your life, and most people don't realize until it's too late that they spent their life defending their pain instead of building their potential. You can live the next 10 years repeating the same emotional loops, getting offended by the same types of people, ruminating over the same kinds of interactions, reacting, retreating, regretting, and repeating. Or you can choose something else, something uncommon. You can become the person who doesn't flinch every time life gets noisy, the person who doesn't crumble when misunderstood, the person who doesn't chase down every misjudgment trying to correct it. Instead, you become the person who builds, who protects their time, who cultivates stillness, who rises not because life got easier, but because they stopped giving away their power so cheaply. This isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming emotionally sovereign. It's not about ignoring people, but about choosing which voices get to shape your reality. Not every opinion deserves your time. Not every conflict requires your involvement, and not every provocation warrants your reaction. You're not here to be at the mercy of the world. You're here to master your relationship with it. So the next time something or someone bothers you, don't rush to respond. Pause. Ask yourself, what am I really reacting to? And more importantly, why am I still letting this shape my experience? Because once you start asking better questions, you get access to better choices. You begin to see that freedom isn't something the world grants you. It's something you give yourself every time you refuse to be disturbed by what doesn't deserve you. You can train your mind like you train your body. You can build resilience like you build muscle, through resistance, repetition, and recovery. but only if you stop outsourcing your peace to things outside your control. The most powerful version of you is not the one who wins every argument. It's the one who no longer needs to. That's your invitation, not to harden, but to grow stronger, not to suppress your emotions, but to own them, and not to wait for life to get quieter, but to become the person who no longer gets rattled by its noise.